And Kristaps Porziņģis. When it comes to Jrue Holiday, he was the difference maker, right? Jrue Holiday played excellent defense, was outstanding in the Eastern Conference Finals a year ago. He was battling somewhat of a hamstring injury this year. He got the extension at the end of last season, which really propelled him through the finals. Awesome leader, great player. You know, at times maybe they needed a little bit more from him. There was age. I mentioned the hamstring as well, but they're in the locker room. He's one of the better guys and might be a future Hall of Famer in the league. He might be. So when it came to Kristaps Porziņģis, the question was always health for Porziņģis. Always health. And I'll give you what the trade was coming up in a little bit. But Kristaps Porziņģis, when healthy, was one of the most dominant bigs on the team. And there was a point last year before the playoffs where he was the second best player outside of Jason Tatum. He was. Jaylen Brown was still dealing with his knee injury. Porziņģis was carrying the team. He came down with some sort of illness that he just never came back from. His cardio was bad, and they could not rely on him. And quite frankly, without Holiday and without Porziņģis, without Holiday playing to his level and Porziņģis even being present, you could see the deficiencies, and of course, Jason Tatum went down with a torn Achilles. Both those pieces are gone. The Celtics championship team from a year ago has lost two of those players. They had to do this, A, because new ownership has come in. Said they weren't going to make big changes, but Wick Grossbeck at least threw it out there that no team will pay the second apron tax multiple years in a row, and here we are now. The Celtics today traded Kristaps Porziņģis for the Hawks, and quite frankly, it's a three-team trade with Brooklyn. They're getting Georgie Niang, a local guy who's a bench player who can shoot the three pretty well, can probably play the four, and they got a draft pick. They essentially dumped Kristaps Porziņģis today. Now, in the long run, the Celtics are going to save somewhere between $180 million on the tax. That's huge money. They save $40 million on the Jrue Holiday deal, and I do want to get into the Holiday deal as well. I do want to get into that. But for the most part, right now, the Celtics are going to be without Jason Tatum, Jrue Holiday, and Kristaps Porziņģis. Three huge pieces from their championship team. This is truly a new look Boston Celtics. The changing of the guard, without a doubt. I don't know what's next. The pieces that they got in return really won't impact the team this year, and maybe that's calculated, maybe that's part of the plan. But the Celtics right now have gotten out of the second apron as far as their tax goes. And, you know, when it comes to the first apron, and I hate to get into the minutia of, you know, the numbers and where they stand on the tax, they legitimately dumped Kristaps Porziņģis today. And it probably shows you what the rest of the league thought about him. If this was the best deal that they could get, I mean, they're really not taking on much whatsoever. But this from Yossi Goslan. He's a big tax penalty guy and cap guy. The Celtics have reduced their luxury tax penalty by nearly $210 million by trading Kristaps Porziņģis and Jrue Holiday. In return, the Celtics will get Anthony Simons and George Niang. $238 million in total savings so far. They're $4.5 million below the second apron. So there they are. They're below the second apron. They've essentially moved out Jrue Holiday for Anthony Simons and Kristaps Porziņģis for George Niang. My take is this. I don't think the Celtics have championship expectations this year. I think they like the team they have. I think there's players that they want to develop. And I think Brad Stevens did an excellent job acquiring at least a player with a little bit of a upside who's been a leader. If I guess we can call him a leader in Portland. But they still have some options with that deal too. And as of right now, I don't know if they're moving on from Jaylen Brown, but the addition of Simon gives them at least some insurance if they want to do that. Now, looking at it, the team's worse, clearly. And if they traded Jaylen Brown, they're really trying to dump money because they won't get anything in return for Jaylen Brown. Nothing. And what I mean by that is they won't get the exact player, I don't think, unless it's a Giannis or someone to that degree or some sort of superstar. I'd rather get your finances in order this year. So next year when Jason Tatum's healthy, then you go for it again. But this Porzingis move's a dump. Maybe the rest of the league didn't find anything worth giving up for him. It's probably exactly what happened. They got out of years with Drew Holiday. I like that move. Now, I'm not saying Simons is the guy and he's going to be here in Boston. I like the fact they got out of remaining years without giving up assets. I thought they would have had to given up assets to get rid of both Holiday and Porzingis, and somehow Brad Stevens didn't do that. I'm not sitting there banging on the door telling you Brad Stevens made the greatest move. All I'm telling you is the Celtics dumped two players. They grabbed two players in return that still might not be here, but they didn't give up any assets. We all thought they were going to have to give up first-round picks or other players to sweeten deals to take on money. They got rid of both players without giving more. I think that's a win right there because, again, this year, for those who say, oh, well, Anthony Simon will just come here and replace Tatum's points production, I don't think they're looking at that this year. I still think they have a good team. Maybe they make it to the second round of the playoffs. I don't know. But championship aspirations, I just don't see that happening with this team. And I think these two moves prove that they want to get their finances in order. Maybe Sam Hauser's next. Maybe they try to get a little bit further down in the first apron. I think it's the best move for the Celtics to keep Jaylen Brown, keep the rest of the players that you have, get your finances in order, have Joe Mazzulla, maybe extend him too. I don't know. We got to get into that at some point. But these moves aren't about going for a championship. They're about getting your finances in order. They didn't give up any assets to do that. I think that's a win. I'm not going to praise and sit here and say, woo, Brad Stevens greatest ever. But the fact that they didn't give up any assets to dump two players and save over $238 million and get under the second apron? They're a worse team today. They're no longer a championship contender today. That sucks. But they got their finances back in order. 6-1.
Those picks, and Desmond Bane is getting 5 first-round picks. I think the Celtics are at least considering it. I don't think they move Jaylen Brown. I'd be shocked if they did. I don't think they should. And on the Holiday move, I think it's a good move. It's I heard Maz and McCarthy going back and forth on this in Big Jim, how Stevens has his hands tied a little bit this offseason, where teams know he's dumping salaries. So he's not going to get the best deals. That's why I think people are reacting the way they're reacting to the Holiday deal, because he was in a bad spot and he was still able to get something in return. Simons is a good player. He doesn't play a lick of defense. He's a very good shooter, athletic. Maybe he turns it around a little bit. He's not Derek White. Derek White came into the league as a two-way guy, a great defender. He played under Ime. He was an Ime guy in San Antonio. That's part of the reason the Celtics were interested in him. So it's not like that. Simmons is more of or Simons, I should say, is more of an offensive player.
Won the slam dunk contest in 2021, for those that don't remember, because people don't care about it. He's a super athlete. I'll just say this: in Portland, they threw him in the water and he had to swim, and he did that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's an all-star. Could he be? 7 years in the league. I'm just talking about, I'm talking to them if they want to trade him too. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things here where I don't think this guy is just trash.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's an NBA player, and that's the thing too. Niang comes back. I'm not convinced Niang or Simons is on the roster to start next season. They both could be moved. They both could be here. I think a lot of things are going on. But Porziņģis, it was a salary dump. Don't let anyone tell you anything else. That's a straight up. We're done
without giving up assets, and that's the only reason why I like what happened today, Skaz, is they gave up no assets. But it sucks. They're not a championship team, Skaz. They're not people who are like, yeah, Brad's going to do this. They got under the apron now. They're under the second apron. They have about $4 million to play with if they want to make moves. I don't think they can make additions now. And it sounds like they now want to get into the lottery, and they're interested in Yakachunas from Illinois, who, by the way, I love. Like, holy smokes, if they drafted this dude, he's a guard who's 6'9" and shoots the three galore and was awesome last year. So I'm in on that. Like, if they want to do that, I'm in. I'm just wondering how much more are they going to save? They just freed up $238 million. I have to look at Keith Smith on what the actual money is when it comes to this year, because the Holiday deal was what? Just under $5 million. So I'm curious on how much it was for this year. So it was 4.5 for him. I'll get the details coming up in a little bit here, but overall, I don't think they're moving on from Jaylen Brown. I hope the plan is to have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum here for years to come. I think that's what's best for the Celtics. But if you want to sell me, at least, that you're trying to get your finances in order and that you can bring in a Simons and see how he fits in and if he actually gels with the team or not, you have an opportunity to give him an extension. You can do that. If you want to dump him at the trade deadline, you can do that. If you want to let his expiring contract come out of $26 million, you can do that. And you can then, when you get Jason Tatum back, get back into the race of being a championship contender. These moves, people, they got stuff in return. Nothing great. They didn't give up anything more. But what they did give up was their championship aspirations for this year. One of the best championship teams of all time has been broken up.